We doubled in size, 100% growth last year. There's not enough talk about actually how hard it is. It's how you end the race and not how you start the race. I feel like we could have done better. It's been a difficult couple of months. The minute you put yourself up onto another platform, kind of you leave yourself open for vulnerability.
Well, hello everyone, and a very warm welcome back to Taking Care of Business, the in-house Sedulo podcast. I'm joined by Paul Cheetham-Karcz, the Managing Director of Sedulo itself, and we're going to take a little retrospective look at all the things that have been happening in Sedulo over the last year and also over this series. So welcome, Paul, back to your own podcast.
Thank you.
Being interviewed again.
Yeah.
We started filming this podcast in October.
Yeah.
So for anyone that wants to know a little bit more about you, they can refer to episode 1 of series 1. What we want to catch up on in this episode is all of the things that have been happening in Sedulo over the last few months.
Yeah. So I think, was it October we started?
It was,
something like that. And thinking that, we talked about like it was a rise and a rise and a rise. You know, we'd bought in leads, we'd all knitted in well. Everything was really starting to, you know, we was really on kind of a steep progress curve. And we started the podcast, and we started the podcast because we want to tell people about real stories in real life. And it's quite interesting that we sit here and we're just about to start series 2. And I guess we're not in the same position as what we was in that kind of the heights of when we started series 1, which in many ways I think is a good thing, because these podcasts are about real life business. What's happened? Great year if you look at it from, you know, our start in January to the end of December, and sometimes you have to do this just for sanity. Sometimes you have to take a step back and think, hold on a minute, we started at A and we've ended up at B here, and that's a great achievement, what we did in the whole of the year. But it kind of dropped off November, December, and it's been a difficult couple of months, and I don't know whether that's the time of the year. You know, December's always slightly more difficult, but because there's less working days. But yeah, just generally, we went from hitting target, record month, and then October was a great month, and then November should have been a great month and wasn't. We should have picked it up in December, and we didn't. So we're kind of starting the year. I feel a little bit like, you know, it's like that. It's like that. I always think, me as well, it's how you end the race and not how you start the race.
Right.
So I think even on LinkedIn, I put something up on the 1st of November, and it's like, guys, I hope you're not kind of running yourself down into Christmas mode. You know, there's no point winning a 100-metre race 80 metres in and slowing down and watching 2 or 3 people pass you at the line. And in many ways, if I assess it looking back, I feel like great year. If I look at the last 20 metres, if you like, of the race, I feel like we could have done better. So slightly frustrating. But yeah, you know, we put ourselves on a different platform, a different pedestal. And in business, and as you've seen with the podcast, we'll talk a bit more about them later, but you just don't get a journey in business that goes, you go from number 1 and you get to number 2 and success level number 3 and number 4. It just doesn't work like that. The minute you put yourself up onto another platform, kind of you leave yourself open for vulnerability. It's funny, I was at an event on that we had here a couple of days back, and there was a chap who does a sports psychologist at Burnley Football Club, and what he put up on the TV was, I think it was a crayfish or a shellfish. It was some kind of fish, and it's sped up. It sped up what happens or how it evolves. And you had the crayfish, let's call it for now, and it was there and it was fine in the water. And then what we didn't know was, over a period of time, that crayfish will start to shed its shell. And the reason it does that is because the shellfish grows, but the shell doesn't grow, of course, it's hard. And what it showed was, over a very quick period, the shellfish would expose itself, shell its protection, and it quickly scarpered off to the corner of the tank or whatever it was in and hid in the corner. And it was a great analogy, that, of where I felt like we were today. We could have sat where we were beginning of last year in one city, 50, 60 staff, really nice really nice, organically growing business. And what we decided to do, if you like, was take off our shell in order to grow. And when you do that, you expose yourself and you can be a bit vulnerable. So that's where we are at the moment. And that's the best analogy you can give. It was a perfect event to go to, really, just to kind of give that analogy that now, when that shellfish grows its shell back, it grows itself and the shell grows with it in the new size. I guess that is where we are today.
Yeah, well, it's fitting as well. It's a new year, so new challenges. I mean, you talk about it like a race. Would you say, I mean, when I think of like growth and stuff and looking at a chart, it kind of looks more like a mountain. Race, does that mean you're comparing yourself to others? Or
I'm not sure. I've just always had this idea of, I always feel like people start to, from November, peter off. And I've never understood it. Years ago, I don't nowadays, but years ago I used to work Christmas Day. I once read that Linford Christie, talking about racing, I once read that Linford Christie's favourite day of training of the year, whether it's true or not, it's Christmas Day, because he felt like everybody else would have that day off, except him. So that day he would
be the best.
He would push himself forward more. Or catch them up, whichever way it was. And so I read that like 15 years ago, I think, and thought, that is a great thing. As I've got kids and as I'm getting older, I'm starting to think that that's not the way to be. But I don't know why I've always had that analogy of, I think sometimes complacency sets in. And I think the people that tend to do well over a long period of time, of course, are the ones that are consistent and avoid that complacency. And so I always guard us as a firm, try to send out little hints about, let's not have a fantastic 10 months and peter off in the last 2. If I'm honest, I feel like we petered off in the last 2. Can't take away, looking at the year as a whole, it was, we doubled in size, 100% growth last year, opened in 2 extra cities, of course, because we've got London, which we did organically, and we did Leeds as an acquisition. So I can't be too fierce in my criticism, if you like, but it just didn't end in the way. It didn't end in glory. Yeah,
it feels though with all that success and all that growth that there would be a natural kind of leveling off period where you're acclimatizing, and you've given that analogy about the crayfish becoming too big for its shell. Yeah. So you've grown and you're turning into something else, and you're having a bit of a restructure of Sedulo. Yeah. You're about to take on an MD and an FD. Yep. Talk us through that decision, and also how that might change your personal role in Sedulo going forward.
I mean, it was always going to happen. So we haven't had a less than we haven't had an unsuccessful 2 months, if you like, and now we're changing. It was always going to do that. So we've kind of got to a point now where I always see this kind of CEO and MD. Now, to me, a CEO was always somebody who was on the board of a listed company. Right. As people have kind of picked up on that, I mean, to me, a CEO is a CEO of Pete Cargill, JD Sports, right? That to me is a CEO. And to me, I've always been, I'm not really bothered about titles, but if it's an MD or managing partner or whatever it is. But what I have realised lately, and so what you've tended to have is people who've got like 3 members of staff calling themselves CEOs, and I've never got that. I've started to get at this level now with 100 staff plus that there's a different role between a CEO and MD, and I've started to feel like, for me, I'm better in a CEO role than MD. What's the difference, I guess? Well, for me, an MD is somebody who on a day-to-day basis his skill sets are best used focusing on the detail of the IT, the detail of the HR function, the detail of the finance function, basically that operational detail that, if I'm honest, I think I've got skill sets in other areas. So I've got a vision for us over the next 3 years to double in size at least. That will include acquisitions, it will include other cities, it will include, we're looking at building our own private equity fund together, and all that is like a vision. And I think I'm better at doing that. So bringing in an MD and an FD to make sure that the infrastructure is built for us to double, and it's not so focused around me, I think it's the right time to do it.
Right, okay. And with that in mind, you've also talked about bringing in an advisory board. Yep. Can you talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, so we're always looking at infrastructure, whether it's bringing in infrastructure for the youngsters, which we brought in like an accelerator scheme, or a board. an internal board. And one of the things I've toyed with for the past 6 or 7 months is bringing in an advisory board. What you tend to see in professional firms, accountancy firms, is the company's run by another accountant, or you put your accountant, your tax advisor and your corporate finance advisor on the board. And I don't want to do that. We work with entrepreneurial businesses. So I think our advisory board should be business owners, entrepreneurs, business people that haven't got the accountancy skill set, haven't got that professional services expertise, if you like. In fact, they probably use us for it in some cases, but they've got huge entrepreneurial properties as individuals. And so that's what we're going to do. So we're going to create an advisory board of 2 or 3 people or 3 or 4 people where they add to us as a business, like any other business would have a marketing expert or sales expert or whatever, tech expert. We should have that as our advisory board, as opposed to an audit partner, a tax partner, and a wealth management. So that's what we're going to do. So we're in the process of bringing in a wealth board, an advisory board, which will be 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 people who've all been there and done it in a high growth business.
Okay, and on the topic of adding new things, bringing new things in, you've launched some new services towards the back end of 2018. How will these affect 2019, and what are your sort of plans to help the organic growth of Sedulo going forward?
So there's 2 ways we're going to grow next year. We're going to do some acquisitions again. We're still acquiring, and we're doing organic. 2018, we acquired in Leeds. We did an organic opening of London.
Yeah.
We've got about almost 100 clients from a standing start there. So we're going to push that, and we're probably going to do an acquisition in London now we've created that organic head start or infrastructure. So we push London with an acquisition. It's had great organic growth. We opened up a sports side. So our sports side's pretty good. We've always worked in sport, but now we're working more, again, with individuals in sport as opposed to NGBs and football clubs and sports clubs that we've dealt with. We're now going back into working quite a bit with professional sports people. We set up the sport in August time, I think, August, September. Yes, we advise them on the wealth and after their first sporting career planning. But the other thing that we do, which I think is great, and it gives us a differentiator, is we act for some fairly big, it might be coffee shop chains or petrol station chains, who just want to sell coffee, and they're the main coffee, the people on the high street you'd expect to see. We're working with these people. If they want to open in Norwich another coffee shop, they might see one that's for sale. They don't want to buy, they just want to lease. So what we're actually doing with our sports stars, which is a bit different, is building commercial property portfolios for our footballers or some snooker players, some boxers or musicians. And what we're doing with those is trying to build a portfolio of commercial properties with an anchor tenant, a Starbucks or equivalent, people like that, where they get a 25-year lease or then a 25-year income. And if we can build 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of those for a player between the ages, say, 25 and 35, by the time he gets to the age of 35, he's got 10 lots of income coming in for the next 15 to 25 years. It's just a way of players having that fallback position when it comes to leaving sports. So we've set that up, and I think I don't know how many, but I reckon we act for 40, 50 players now. Wow. Something like that, or actors or media from that neck of the woods. And then the other thing we set up in November to accompany that was our own mortgage division. Yes. So that's commercial and residential. Actually opens up a little bit to business to consumer, B2C. Whereas we've always, if we went to a client and they have 2 owners, in the main, we can only act for the 2 owners. Now, actually, we can out their 100 employees. Yeah. So it's a new twist on what we've done. But in the main, we did it to supplement our property portfolios that we're building for our wealthy clients, basically.
Brilliant. So our next point is also going back to actually the second episode in the series, because you talked a lot about mental health in both your initial interview with me and the one with Holly Moore, which I believe was episode 2. How have you found things recently? And since sort of opening a dialogue about it, how have you felt within the business?
Yeah, well, I think I mentioned at the time that I'm quite vocal about it, so I don't mind speaking about it. I mean, some people, it's tough for them, and Holly spoke about it, and she went into quite a lot of detail. I think the most detail she said she's ever been into about it. For me, I live with it on a daily basis, and I have to manage it every day, whether it's through natural, drinking water or make sure I have enough sleep. Actually, I've got a Fitbit, by the way. I've seen you've got one as well. But it's been really good for my stress, because there's sometimes when I've been thinking I feel highly stressed and I've looked at my Fitbit and my heart rate's like 50 odd or 60. I think, actually, you're not that stressed. So I'll be honest with you. I think I got it, Zeri bought it me, my wife, for Christmas. And it's actually been a real stressor for me.
Yeah.
But when I felt like actually I might be stressed, I've had a look at things and actually everything's all in order.
Yeah.
You get your heart rate, and it's actually like being on an ECG. If you remember when you interviewed me in the first episode, I talked about when I had bad bouts of anxiety 10 years ago. What used to make me feel better was a doctor putting me on an ECG and explaining to me that everything was okay.
Yeah.
Weirdly, this Fitbit feels a little bit like I'm on a 24/7.
Nice.
I don't know what I do, by the way, if it starts going
off.
Exactly. So if it starts beeping, but it has really helped me with my anxiety. It's interesting. We'll talk about in the first series how I control my alcohol when I start to feel a bit more anxious. And I'm actually quite low at the moment in my anxiety status, but alcohol fuels anxiety massively. And that's one of the first things I cut out of my diet. And it was interesting. On my first day off my Fitbit, I was 55, my heart rate was resting 55 beats a minute. And it was Christmas, of course, when I got it. So I drank for 3 days. And in 3 days, my resting heart rate went from 55 to 71, right? Resting heart rate, this. So it went from 55 to 71.
Yeah.
And it took me 8 days.
Really?
So 3 days of drinking and 8 days to get it back down to where it was.
And have you noticed the same with caffeine? Because I know you don't, when you're having particular days, you don't have it.
I do. I cut caffeine out, and it's somebody asked me that the other day, and I don't know whether I've not seen a spike or anything when I have when I do have the caffeine. I've not seen it, so I'm not sure. But alcohol, I don't know whether you get them or not, but I've always had them palpitations in the morning, and I've always had really bad anxiety when I've drank too much.
Yeah.
But when I think it went 55, 63, 68,
and
71.
And then you're in a cycle, aren't you, going, oh God.
And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Those palpitations are actually correct. And I'm guessing it's just your heart rate having to work to get rid of the toxins from the body. Yeah. I'm guessing, I don't know. But it certainly made me stop drinking. I stopped drinking for 7-8 days. It was January anyway. But interestingly, it's come back down. But almost every day that it increased my resting heart rate, and created that increased anxiety by. You can feel a faster heart rate, I think, if you're like me anyway, if you're an anxious person. It took me, for every 1 day it went up on drinking, it took 3 days to bring it back down.
And this is only in the mornings?
Well, it's your resting heart rate, so that's your resting heart rate.
And when you would get racy heart?
Oh, well, I get it all the time.
All the time, really?
After drinking. Excuse me. But, so this is your resting heart rate. It's not like palpitation down. It's
base level.
Somehow measuring your base level throughout the day and saying your base level is much higher. So a Fitbit's done me good actually, because when I've done various things, I've felt a bit palpitationally. I've looked at it, actually seen that I'm at 65 beats a minute or something.
And that's reassured you.
It's reassured. But so I cope with it on a daily basis. Some of the people we spoke about. Obviously, we spoke to Richard McCann. In the last podcast, and he'd had so much adversity in his life. You expect him to have issues, and he talks about them on our podcast and in his various books he's written since. Holly spoke about it, and Pete Cowgill from JD Sports, he was another one who talked about that kind of insecurity. He woke up every morning, he said, with anxiety, and that was fueled by the insecurity. I guess with him, he's on the stock market, so his performance is measured every day. So because of that, he wakes up every day with an insecurity, anxious feeling. So it wasn't uncommon amongst the people that we interviewed, that's for sure.
I think the real kicker with anxiety as well is even when there is nothing to worry about, your anxiety is like, oh, there's nothing to worry about. I'm suspicious of that.
Yes.
Start manufacturing worry, crisis managing everything that might possibly go wrong that hasn't happened yet.
Completely.
And it's a total cycle.
Completely.
So you're either worrying about something legitimate, even though that's not how generalized anxiety works, or because there's nothing, your brain's like, there's got to be something.
Yeah, I agree. I think in the book, that the book's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Yes, I know.
And in that, have you read it?
No, but I know it.
In that book, they say exactly that the body's not primed to not have some fear. Because back in obviously cavemen, you was constantly living in a state of fear. So actually, even when you've got no fear or anxiety, your body's really searching to try and find something to be anxious about.
Yes. That thing where, when you're just about to drop off to sleep and your heart rate's really slow and then you jolt awake because your body's like, no, this is not
Something's
okay.
Not right. Yeah.
Well, good. And how have you had feedback from other people about that particular aspect of the podcast or anything like that? Or
podcast's been interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, we've done pretty well, I think, in the ratings. At first, it was like we're looking every day to see what the ratings are, what our chart position is. So from that perspective, we've been told by a lot of people in the industry that our chart position, I think, was at 40 odd or something like that in the iTunes chart. It was a great position for us at such an early stage of doing these things. So I think it's been well received from that perspective, and it's interesting how many people have listened to the podcast that I wouldn't have thought of. I was in London the other week speaking to someone, and I won't say who it was, but I didn't expect somebody of that magnitude to have said, I've been listening to your podcast. I was at Man United watching a game with a client about 3 weeks ago. Somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, is it Paul Cheetham? And I said, yeah. And he said, I did come and meet you about 5 or 6 years ago, and I've been listening to your podcast. So cool. I think from that perspective, it's been quite successful in getting out there in the message. But I think the people we've had on has helped that, because I think we had some great guests, and we'll talk about it in a bit, but we've got some fantastic guests coming up for Series 2.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, my next question, which sort of links into what I've just asked you really, was that part of the reason you created it was to invite people into kind of the unique world of Sedulo, as is happening, both as clients and as interviewees.
Exactly. And we're always trying to bring people on who are, like I say, within our world. So that was always, we wanted to keep it within the world of Sedulo. The reasons we were doing podcasts were because we wanted to talk about the struggle. And we'll talk about, if you look at every single podcast we did, almost bar none, there was no podcast, coming back to what I said before, of anyone, whether it's the guy who's got runs a £5 billion PLC, or the client that is an author and just has him in his own business. Yeah. All of them consistently were overcoming adversity. And one of the reasons I wanted to do the podcast is because when you originally asked me in episode 1 why you're doing it, was because I don't feel there's enough spoke about the struggle. Yeah. There's not enough talk about actually how hard it is. And I'm ironically going through that phase again. Yes. Yeah. I'm going through a little bit of pain and exposure, and why is that not working as well as that was working 4 months ago? And why are we not hitting the figures that we hit there? And we should, and without doubt, across the whole thing, if you look at Pete Cowgill, he got kicked out of JD, or he left. I don't remember the exact thing, but certainly he left JD and then went in. It was a bit of a Steve Jobs type scenario. Well,
and Sandeep and Seema talked in theirs about, you asked them actually, because they got to that point where they were really comfortable, they were earning a really nice amount, and it was all balanced, but they pushed it over the edge to go bigger and went through that stage, and that's what's happening to you now. So, I mean, I guess feeds nicely into the next question, which is, what are the most valuable lessons that you've learned from all these people that you've interviewed? Because I would say that is
for me, that was the biggest one. And that was the one I wanted people to see. And that's the one, as we continue, I want people to keep getting that. Because it's for people who are feeling on the up. They're just going doing what the continuation of what they've been doing. It's the people that sometimes in that struggle that might want to give up. Yeah. Or they might think the self-doubt might come in, or they haven't got that sounding board to think, is this normal? You know, I was doing really well like 6 months ago. Why am I not doing really well now? So for me, that was a major part of doing it. And I think that came out. So it gave me reassurance when I'm speaking to, you know, Pete Cowgill in his mid-60s who's, you know, done it all. There was a time 20 years ago, or whatever it was, where actually he had to leave JD and then come in. Sandeep and Seema, you know, they got to a level where they could have been like that forever, decided, and I think Holly Moore was exactly the same. And Richard was different, of course, because what happened in Richard's case personally was nothing to do with, you know, not a self-made decision.
Yes.
Whereas the others are self-made.
Yeah.
You know, Holly Moore can continue as she is if she wants, but now she's decided to take her business on to the next level. I think she's gone from 5 staff to 16, she said, within a year. And with that comes more challenges.
Of course.
Challenges.
So we're going to continue with the second series.
Yeah.
Which is very exciting, consisting of about 8 interviews.
Yeah.
What can we expect from the second series as opposed to the first one? Could you tell us a bit about what we've got?
So it's a bit more of the same because I feel like we've got 6 or 7 people. I think we did 7 with the Empowering Women event.
Yeah.
So we've got 7 people's perspective. From the feedback we've had, people seem to like them. So we're going to continue with a bit more of that. So we're just going to keep bringing people in. Some of the guests we've got coming up, we've got Diane Modal, MBE. I think she just last week, I think it's an MBE that she's got. So we've got Diane coming up from a kind of inspirational.
Yep.
How she won a gold medals for a start, and then what she's doing in the community now. I think we did well in the first series mixing up. We mixed up a PLC with charity like Dan Gillings, with one-man business owners like Richard McCann, with Holly using that growth. So we'll try and do the same again. We've got Diane from that community and inspirational side. We've also got Jason Rickaby that owned PhD Protein.
Yeah.
It's a big brand and they've just sold. So that'd be going to be interesting from that exit perspective.
Yeah. Still
chief executive now. So we've got him. We've got, who else we got confirmed? I think we have Sanjay Vadera confirmed. He's the CEO of the Fragrance Shop.
Right.
I think they have 100 plus outlets. That's a pretty big one.
Yeah.
So we've got another one we're looking at doing is with a guy called Clinton who owns the brand Clarabella. And what we might do with him is twist it up a little bit and do kind of go into real detail rather than an hour's snapshot of somebody's lives.
Do you like regular catch-ups with him?
Yes.
Yeah, throughout the year.
So I think we'll do more of the same, but what we will do with Clinton in particular, a little bit like we've just done then, which is when you start to talk about what's happened in the last 3 months, you can go in a little bit more detail than talking of 45 minutes about somebody's whole career, business and life. So I think with Clinton, we might do 3 or 4, and we start off and say in the next quarter, what are your aims? And then really how we've assisted him getting there. We'll probably do something like that as like a special that's recurring, just at that granular level detail. Yeah,
so something for everyone at whatever level across various genres, which is great.
And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying, it's great, as I said before in the initial interview with you, it's great when you read Branson's book. It is inspiring, but it's just a little bit too far beyond reach.
Yeah.
So I want people to be able to read this podcast who are a one-man band. I actually want people who might not even be in business. There's a lot of things, whether it be mental illness or resilience or a lot of those, even the instance of just giving about the crayfish or shellfish before, actually you could just attribute that to your life.
Yeah.
About growing, shelling, exposing yourself. You don't have to own a business to go through that.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to go through it. So I think even though this is a business podcast, it's a taking care of business was always that dual edge of taking care of yourself and taking care of business. I feel like, we just keep... I forgot the original question now.
Just about what we can expect.
So I think that actually I want people... That was the point. That's not necessarily, even business owners can actually listen to this podcast and be inspired by somebody like Richard McCann or Dan Gillings to do good in the community, or Holly Moore who's at her stage, or Pete Cowgill even who's at his stage. And the new ones, you look at Diane Modal, you look at the difference between her, who's going to have an amazing story, and Sanjay Vadera, who's going to be real business focused.
And comparing their psychologies as well, like how they both tackle challenges, because they're completely different challenges, but I bet there's a lot of similarities. So that
seems to be the theme, doesn't it? No matter what the challenge is, what the industry is, or what the size of the company is, or where you are in your life, everybody's experiencing a variation of the theme, which is the same challenges, and it's how they overcome them.
So just to finish up, how is 2019 looking for you? What does a successful 2019 look like?
2019 should be a good year for us. As I say, we move on from where we was last year. We don't stand still. That's not what we're about. We are going to see the benefit of the growth that we discussed earlier, which is organic. We're looking at 2 acquisitions now. So we're looking to do 1 in Leeds, 1 in London, maybe 1 in Sheffield. We're having a look at doing an extra city this year. So in order to do that, we're going to bring in an advisory board. I'm not even sure whether we might take on for the acquisitions a little bit of investment. I'm not sure yet. I'm toying with the idea of that. Now we've got to a position we're in. I don't want that to tail off.
Yeah.
If you remember in the first interview, the reason why we did Leeds was it gave us that initial push immediately, because a lot of accountancy firms get to 50 staff and 3-4 million quid.
Yeah.
And then they just stay there.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't just stay there, because we immediately went from 3-4 million quid to 7-8 million quid.
Yeah.
And I don't want to just stay there. So now it's kind of a push to get us beyond 10 million this year.
Yeah, you said in your, I think it was the half-year review that we had, where we were on the list of accountancy firms in the country. And if you're talking about people like Ernst & Young and PricewaterhouseCoopers and people like all those financial services companies, we were way higher up than you would have expected for a company of this size, you said.
Yeah.
So it's kind of working towards that, getting away from...
It is one of our goals, that, I mean, there's 7,000 accountancy firms-ish.
That's it, yeah.
I think we were about number 70.
Yeah.
So in the top 1%. What we need to do to break into that top 50 is probably double in size again.
Yeah.
And that's what we aim to do in the next 3 years. So it'll be acquisitions, it'll be infrastructure, it'll be advisory board, and the other side of it, it'll be more fun.
Yeah.
We had another review at the start of on Monday, because it was the start of the year, January the 7th or whatever it was, and we talked about our 3 pillars, and it's we get results together, we have fun together, and we give back to the community together. And all 3 of them are kind of we will expand upon from what we did last year. And we probably hit all 3 last year, if I'm honest. This year, let's go one better on all 3 fronts. So business-wise, it's acquisitions and organic growth. Fun. We're only here to have fun. I think sometimes people say that because it's the right thing to say.
Yeah.
I think we genuinely try as best as we can to do that. And the giving back, I mean, we did 2,000 gifts at Christmas.
Yeah.
You was right in the middle of that, so you wrapped about 1,000 of them, I think.
236 children we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And next year we go, that's just one area that we do to give back to the community. I think it's important for us all in fortunate positions to do that. And we'll go better than that next year, and we'll continue to do as much as we can for the communities in which we live in and work in. Brilliant.
Well, that's a lovely note to end on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just to wrap up, thank you so much for watching or listening, if indeed you are listening. Please do like this video if you've enjoyed watching it, and you can click on the subscribe link to subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with what Paul's doing and who he's interviewing. And if you would like, please do follow us on Twitter at Sedulo. And see you next time for Series 2. Thanks. Bye.